The spoon clinked once against my coffee mug when my son leaned in and asked if I'd start paying rent. Still, I didn't answer. Just let the steam rise between us like all the years I kept this roof over his head. As the porcelain cooled in my hands, I heard his wife in the hallway whispering, "It's time she contributes." While their voices turned into numbers, I remembered every payment I made before he even learned how to sign his name. The same mug I'd bought when we closed on the house now sat heavier, as if even it knew who built this place. That's when I smiled and said, "You want rent? Then start packing. I already paid for everything you're standing on." All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The clink of a coffee spoon against porcelain echoed like a metronome in the still of Dorothy Macmillan's kitchen. Morning light filtered through the plantation shutters, striping the oak table where 3 mugs sat, 2 steaming, 1 untouched. Cameron leaned back in the chair she bought in 1991, the one with the faint scratch from Layla's high chair days. His legs sprawled wide, claiming space. He blew across the top of his coffee like he had something serious to say, but couldn't decide how to say it. Then, too casually, too rehearsed, "We've been thinking, maybe it's fair if you start contributing a little rent." Dot didn't blink. She didn't touch her coffee, didn't ask what, or why, or, "Are you out of your damn mind?" She just looked at him, calm, like a pond before a hurricane. Melody was perched on the edge of the seat next to him, chin tilted sweetly, hands folded like a pageant queen at a press conference. "Just to help offset costs," she chirped. "You know, groceries, maintenance, the Wi-Fi. Nothing personal." Dorothy's gaze didn't waver. Her voice, when it came, was low and smooth. "You're asking me to pay rent? In my own house?" Cameron chuckled as if it was a joke, then saw her face and sobered. "Technically, we all live here now," he said. "And it's not really about ownership. It's about fairness." Dorothy's jaw worked once, just once, before stilling again. "You want fairness?" Cameron pressed on, emboldened. "I mean, we're pitching in. I painted the downstairs bathroom and fixed that leak in the guest room window. We figured a little financial contribution from everyone might make things more balanced." Melody smiled like a woman trying on sincerity. "And we're definitely not trying to offend you. It's just, with inflation and everything, you know how things are." Dorothy's silence stretched. Her fingers brushed the edge of her mug but didn't lift it. At the kitchen island, Layla had been scrolling on her phone, earbuds halfway in. The words sank in slowly. Then she froze. Eyes flicked up, uncertain, wide. She pulled one butt out. "Wait," she said softly. "Are you saying Grandma should pay you to live here?" Melody made a soft tsk sound. "No, no, honey. Not to us. Just to the house." "The house," Dorothy repeated. Cameron nodded. "Right. It's nothing personal." The clock ticked behind them, a dusty brass thing that hadn't chimed since 2009. Dorothy stood slowly, the wood of her chair creaking under its age and memories. She walked to the sink, poured her untouched coffee down the drain with measured grace, then rinsed the cup as if it were the only thing needing cleansing in the room. Still facing the window, she said, "This house was bought in 1983, paid off in full before you graduated high school." She turned. "I've weathered 6 recessions, 2 busted water heaters, and 32 Christmas dinners in this kitchen. I planted every azalea on that front walk myself. Your father died on that recliner in the living room, the one you think clashes with your new aesthetic." Cameron opened his mouth. Dorothy held up one finger. "You painted a bathroom." Silence. "I let you in because you said things were tight. Because family's supposed to hold each other up when things are hard, not drain each other dry the moment they see a way to profit." Melody's smile faltered. "I Dot, we're just trying to be adults about this. No, Dot said, voice cool as tile. You're trying to be landlords. Layla looked between them, cheeks flushed, fists tight in her hoodie sleeves. She wanted to speak, but she didn't. Dorothy reached for a dish towel and dried her hands without looking at any of them. Then, evenly, you've got some nerve asking the woman who owns the deed to contribute. Cameron's tone changed, brittle now. So, what? You're saying no? Dorothy folded the towel, placed it on the counter. No, she said. I'm saying be careful what you think you're owed, before someone reminds you who really holds the keys. Melody's lips parted like she might argue. Then they heard it. A knock at the back door. Karen, carrying a bakery bag and the smell of cinnamon. She stopped when she saw the faces. And Dorothy? She just smiled. Karen stepped into the kitchen like she'd walked into a police interrogation. The cinnamon rolls steamed in their paper box, sweet air fighting to push out the tension. She blinked once, clocked Cameron's folded arms, Melody's stiff smile, Dot's eerie calm. Well, she said, setting the box down. This room smells like someone said something stupid. Dot's lips curved, just barely. Coffee? Karen poured herself some, uninvited. She'd been doing that for 40 years. Cameron rubbed the back of his neck. We were just having a little family talk. Karen arched an eyebrow. Sounded like a funeral talk from the driveway. Dorothy didn't answer. She disappeared down the hall for a moment, her slippers whispering against the wood. When she came back, she was holding a weathered leather folder, the kind with the metal corners and a faint smell of time. She placed it on the table, careful, deliberate, like she was laying down evidence. No one moved. Then she flipped it open, pulling out a single crisp document. The county watermark shimmered faintly under the morning light. Her fingers were steady. This, she said quietly, is the deed. Cameron shifted, confused at first. Mom, we weren't... She slid the paper across the table, stopping it right in front of him. Her name, Dorothy L. McMillan, sat alone on the ownership line, embossed with a blue notary stamp. I just wanted to make sure, she said, that nobody in this house was confused about who's actually paying rent and who never will. The quiet in that kitchen wasn't just silence. It had weight. The refrigerator hummed like distant static. Layla's breath hitched from her spot near the counter. Karen leaned forward, peering over her glasses. Still looks like your signature, Dot. It is. Dot tapped the corner with her nail. Your father and I bought this house in 1983, paid it off in full in 2007. Every shingle, every nail, every memory is ours. Not yours, not communal, not negotiable. Cameron tried for a smile, the kind that could maybe roll this back. We just thought... Dot's head tilted slightly. No. You assumed. Karen bit back a grin behind her coffee mug. Melody tried to slide in, voice sugar slick. We didn't mean anything by it, Dot. We just thought since everyone lives here now, it's more communal. Communal, Dot repeated. The word tasted wrong in her mouth. Like a dormitory? Or a timeshare? Because I don't recall renting out my kitchen. Melody's cheeks colored. It's just... We handle most of the grocery runs, and Cameron fixed that window. Paid for by my Home Depot card. Dot interrupted, voice still calm. Melody blinked. Oh. Well. Yes, but... Dot leaned forward, elbows on the table. Her eyes were clear, bright. Almost too bright. I keep receipts. Would you like me to show them next? Cameron's jaw tightened. You don't have to make this a whole thing. It is a thing, Karen said, breaking in, tone dry. It's a house deed thing, hard to get more official. Layla looked down at her hands. thumbs worrying a thread loose from her hoodie. She didn't look up when she said softly, "Grandma doesn't make scenes. She makes statements." Dot turned to her granddaughter and something softened in her face. "That's exactly right, sweetheart." Melody reached for her mug, but her hands were trembling just enough to clink against the handle. "Well," she said tightly, "maybe this all got lost in translation. We just want to make sure everyone's contributing, that's all." Dot closed the folder and laid her palm flat on top of it. "Then let's be clear. I contribute by owning this roof. You contribute by remembering that." Cameron looked like he might argue again, mouth half open, eyes darting between his wife and mother. But Karen's low chuckle stopped him cold. "You two ever play poker?" Karen said. "Because Dorothy here just laid down the deed, and you're bluffing with a pair of napkins." Dot pushed back her chair. The old wood moaned under her weight. "I think this conversation's done." But as she turned toward the sink, she caught the reflection of Melody's glare in the kitchen window, quick, sharp, resentful. The kind that didn't fade when the talking stopped. Dot's fingers tightened around the folder's spine. She slid it back into the drawer by the fridge, the one marked Utilities, though everyone knew that was where she kept more powerful things than bills. She exhaled once. Calm again. Outside, a breeze rattled the azaleas by the porch. The same flowers she'd planted when Cameron was 5. Their roots still held. Inside, the air was colder. Karen glanced at her old friend. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Dot gave a faint, dangerous smile. "Oh, I'm way past thinking." By the next morning, the house had that uneasy quiet that follows a storm no one admits happened. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and restraint. Dorothy sat at the dining table with a cup of tea and the leather folder again, this time opened wider, papers spread like old maps across the wood. The pages whispered when she touched them. Tax records, insurance updates, a folder marked Estate Planning, 2011. It had been untouched for more than a decade, back when her husband was still alive and Cameron still returned her calls without sighing first. Karen came in through the side door, the one she never knocked on. She carried a manila envelope under her arm, and that look she got when she smelled an opportunity for a little justice. "I brought copies of the HOA bylaws," Karen said. "Figured you might want some bedtime reading?" Dot looked up. "I might need a stronger light." Karen glanced at the papers spread before her friend. "You're dusting off the old trust file." "I am." A pause. "You serious this time?" Dot's hand hovered above a half-signed page, pen trembling just a little. "When he asked me for rent," she said softly, "I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Cold. Clear." Karen set the envelope down and pulled up a chair. "Want to play defense or offense?" Dot's eyes sharpened, that glint that always meant she was done being underestimated. "Both." She reached for her phone, scrolling until she found the number she hadn't dialed in years. It still sat in her contacts as Barry Dalton, real estate attorney. She hesitated a second, then pressed call. 2 rings. "Dorothy McMillan," came the voice, warm and steady as oak. "Haven't heard that name on my caller ID in too long." "Barry," she said. "It's time." A soft chuckle. "Time for what?" "To put my house, my duplex, and what's left of my peace of mind somewhere safe, where entitlement can't reach it." Barry's tone changed instantly, businesslike but gentle. "I'll draw up the trust papers again. Same parameters?" "Not exactly," she said. "This time, I'm not leaving the door unlocked." Karen grinned. "I'll make coffee. Sounds like we're lawyering up." Across the hall, muffled voices filtered from the living room. Melody and Cameron sat on the couch, whispering sharp little sentences that bled through the drywall. Melody's voice carried a brittle edge. "She humiliated you, Cam, in front of your own daughter. Do you want Layla thinking she can talk to you like that someday?" It's Mom's house, he muttered. What do you expect me to do? Melody's phone chimed. She stared at it a moment, then her face shifted into something composed. Online composure. Curated and cold. Fine, she said. If she wants to play power games, we'll play optics. Her thumbs moved quickly across the screen. A post went up on her feed within minutes. A photo of a cozy corner in the house. Captioned in soft cursive. Living with elders is a spiritual test, and a financial one. Some of us are just trying to bring balance and respect into shared spaces. The hashtags glimmered beneath it like bait. Family challenges, boundaries, gratitude, and growth. It took less than an hour for Layla to see it. She was at her friend's kitchen counter doing homework when it popped up. Her stomach twisted. The comments, half sympathetic, half smug, made her feel like someone had dragged their private life into public daylight. She took a screenshot, then another, just in case. Her thumbs hesitated over the keyboard, then she typed, "Grandma should see this." At home, Dorothy's phone buzzed. She lifted it, squinting at the screen. The image loaded slowly. Melody's filtered smile, her self-righteous tone painted as benevolence. Karen peered over her shoulder. She really posted that? Dot's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. A tightening, like the moment before a wire snaps. She wants balance, Dot said softly. Let's give her some. Karen smirked. I'll get the lemon bars, you get the lawyer. That night, the house felt different. Cameron and Melody's laughter from the den sounded hollow. Rehearsed. Layla's door was closed, her headphones on. The only light came from the dining table, where Dot sat signing the first of many documents Barry had emailed her. Outside, the streetlights hummed over the quiet cul-de-sac, unaware that inside, the balance of power was shifting in slow, deliberate ink strokes. When she finished the last signature, she capped her pen, exhaled, and whispered to the empty room. Fairness, you said. Let's see how fair looks on paper. She slid the signed draft back into the leather folder, the same one Cameron had mistaken for something harmless, and pressed it closed like sealing a vault. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Barry. Draft received. We'll finalize this week. Dot smiled faintly. Perfect. Then another buzz. A message from Layla. Just 3 words and the attached screenshot. She's at it again. Dot's smile didn't fade. If anything, it sharpened. The scent of meatloaf filled the house by 6, thick and nostalgic. Onions caramelizing, ketchup glaze catching in the oven light. Dorothy hadn't cooked a full meal for everyone in weeks, and the sound of plates being set out seemed to put the household on edge. Even the dog next door had gone quiet, as if sensing the performance about to begin. She laid the table herself. 4 plates, cloth napkins, her mother's silver. The kind of setting she used when she still believed dinners could fix things. When Cameron and Melody came in from the living room, they paused like they'd walked into a museum exhibit. Something old, familiar, but dangerous to touch. Layla slipped in quietly behind them, earbuds dangling from her hoodie, her eyes darting between faces. She could feel the pressure radiating like heat. Dot poured sweet tea for everyone but herself. She took coffee. Black. Well, Melody said too brightly, this looks lovely. Smells like home. Dot smiled faintly. It is home. They sat. Forks scraped softly against china. For a few minutes there was only the sound of chewing and the hum of the refrigerator. Then, like a mosquito in summer, Melody's voice broke the silence. So, she said, I've been thinking, maybe we could put a little household budget board up in the kitchen. You know, just to keep track of things like utilities, groceries, who's covering what. Dot didn't look up. She cut a clean slice of meatloaf, her knife gliding through like silk. Do we not already keep track? Melody laughed nervously. Well, sort of. But it'd be nice to make things transparent. That way, everyone feels equal, accountable. Karen's voice echoed in Dot's mind. Defense or offense? Dot took a small bite, chewed slowly. Accountable, she repeated. That's a strong word for a family dinner. Cameron cleared his throat. It's just an idea, Mom. No need to read into it. Dot dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin. Oh, I don't read anymore. I observe. That landed like a pin on glass. Layla stared at her plate, hiding a flicker of a smile. Melody tried again, tone sugar-coated. I just think if we all chip in, it'll feel more balanced. Even fair. Maybe we could even list things like repairs, projects. Like the bathroom painting, Dot said. Melody blinked. Exactly. Cameron seized on it, eager to move the spotlight. Actually, I had another idea. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Casual in the way people are before they say something foolish. We could rent out the guest room on Airbnb, just a few weekends a month, nothing major. Easy money, the market's hot around here. The knife paused mid-cut. Dot looked up, calm and deliberate. We could, she said. If we had a guest room. Cameron frowned. We do. The one down the hall. Dot tilted her head, voice soft as linen. Oh, that's right. I thought that was where you sleep. Melody laughed too loudly, trying to soften it. She's joking, babe. Right, Dot? Dorothy set down her fork. Do I look like a guest? The question hung there. Simple. Devastating. Cameron glanced at Melody, but Melody was already fiddling with her napkin, eyes darting like she wanted to rewind the last minute. Trying to lighten the moment, Melody forced a laugh. You? A guest? No. You're more like the house mascot. Layla's fork froze midair. Even Cameron winced. Dot smiled politely. A perfect, practiced smile. The kind she used at funerals and bank meetings. She lifted her knife again and began to cut the next piece of meatloaf, slow and steady, like precision work. Karen would have called it surgical. The clock ticked. No one breathed for a moment. Then Dot said softly, Mascots usually wear costumes, but I don't recall putting on anyone else's colors. Melody laughed again, but it faltered halfway through. Dot sipped her coffee. You know, she added, when your father was alive, he used to say a home tells you everything you need to know about the people in it, especially when they start calling it theirs. Cameron pushed his plate slightly away. Mom. She didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed somewhere past them, maybe at the empty chair where her husband once sat, maybe at a future she was already rearranging in her mind. Layla broke the silence, voice barely above a whisper. Grandma, the meatloaf's really good. Dot looked at her then, her expression softening for just a heartbeat. Thank you, sweetheart. The moment passed. The air thickened again. From the counter, Dot's phone buzzed. Once. Twice. She reached for it without breaking eye contact with Melody. A preview flashed on the screen, Barry Dalton's name, and the subject line, Draft finalized. Dot pressed the screen dark again, tucked the phone face down beside her plate. Well, she said, tone smooth as glass. Dinner's over, but I think the main course is just beginning. By morning, the smell of last night's meatloaf was gone, replaced by the sterile scent of printed paper. The dining table had transformed into something else entirely, not a family gathering place anymore, but a war desk. Dot sat at the head of it in her robe and reading glasses, laptop open, printer humming beside her. Stack by stack, the new document slid out, warm and final. Karen sat across from her, hair in curlers, sipping coffee from a mug that said, Don't test me before 9 a.m. Barry Dalton's voice crackled softly over the speakerphone. Everything's finalized. I can file the trust today if you want it active immediately. Dot took a slow sip of coffee, her reflection steady in the black surface. Run it by me again. Barry cleared his throat. Both properties, your primary residence and the duplex, are now placed in an irrevocable living trust. They can't be transferred, sold, or mortgaged without the trustee's approval. You'll retain lifetime control. Karen grinned. And when you go, they can't wiggle their greedy fingers into it. Dot smiled faintly. That's the idea. Barry continued. You've designated Layla as the sole beneficiary. Karen Trott as interim trustee until Layla reaches 25. All income and maintenance funds tied to the trust will funnel through the estate account we've created. Dot nodded once. Calm, certain. Good. And the clause? Barry hesitated. I've never written one quite like it before. Karen leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Oh, read it out loud. I love this part. Barry obliged. In the event of documented verbal, emotional, or financial mistreatment toward Dorothy L. McMillan by any named relative, said relative's inheritance rights shall be considered forfeit in perpetuity. He paused. Or, as you called it, Dorothy, the disrespect clause. Dot allowed herself a small laugh, quiet and sharp. Long overdue. Karen clapped once, softly. You're not just closing the door, Dot. You're locking it, bolting it, and hanging a beware of owner sign. Barry chuckled. One question, though. You want this filed publicly or quietly? I can keep it sealed until... Dot interrupted. Let's let them speak freely. Then I'll file. The silence that followed wasn't hesitation. It was respect. Barry knew that tone. It was the same voice Dorothy had used years ago when she and her late husband signed their mortgage, when she'd first decided to stop being afraid of paperwork. Karen reached across the table and patted her hand. They'll never see it coming. Dot's eyes softened. That's the point. Later that afternoon, the house buzzed with the illusion of normalcy. Melody was on her phone in the living room, laughing too loudly at something that wasn't funny. Cameron clattered around in the garage, avoiding everyone. Layla sat on the back steps, homework balanced on her knees, pretending to read, while watching her grandmother through the kitchen window. Dot was at the counter, printing the final notarized copy, the edges of the paper curling under the heat. She slipped it into a manila envelope and sealed it with a slow press of her thumb. Her name on the return address looked heavier now, like it carried its own gravity. Grandma. Layla's voice came softly from the door. What's all that? Dot turned. Just housework, sweetheart. The kind that lasts longer than the laundry. Layla nodded, but she looked unconvinced. You're doing something big, aren't you? Dot smiled. I'm doing something right. Layla lingered a moment longer. Mom and Dad, they don't talk about you nice when you're not in the room. I know, Dot said gently, but someday you'll understand that silence is the best audience. Layla frowned. That sounds lonely. Dot paused. Sometimes it's peaceful. Evening came with the faint sound of crickets and the glow of street lamps stretching across the porch. Karen had gone home, but Barry had texted once more. Documents ready for recording first thing tomorrow. Dorothy stood in front of the hall mirror, the sealed envelope in her hands. For a long moment she studied her reflection. The steady woman who'd built everything these walls held. And the one who now guarded it alone. From the living room came Melody's voice, brittle and syrupy. Cameron, maybe if we got Mom to refinance, we could... Dot didn't wait to hear the rest. She walked to the front door, purse in hand, keys jingling. Outside, the night air was crisp and clean, the kind that made decisions feel final. She climbed into her old Buick and drove toward the courthouse, the envelope sitting on the passenger seat like a co-pilot. Barry was waiting by the filing counter when she arrived. His gray suit looked freshly pressed, his eyes knowing. Ready? He asked. Dot slid the envelope across the marble counter. More than ever. He smiled. Then it's official. As the clerk took the paperwork and stamped the first page with a heavy thunk, Dot exhaled, slow and deep. Not relief, but release. Everything you built is protected now, Barry said. They can shout all they want, they'll never touch it. Dot turned toward the glass doors, her reflection fractured across their panels. That's fine, she said quietly. Let them shout. The walls can take it. Sunday mornings used to belong to calm. Coffee, crossword, the sound of the paper sliding off the driveway. But not anymore. Dorothy sat at the breakfast bar, glasses low on her nose, scrolling through her banking app. She checked it daily now, not out of paranoia, but habit. Since filing the trust, she'd started treating her accounts like an officer checks weapons before battle. Everything was as it should be. Electric bill, HOA dues, grocery debit. Then one line made her thumb stop cold. Hearth and Loom Boutique, 4/17/223. The date? Yesterday. The card? Hers? The store? Uptown Dallas. High-end home decor. Her jaw set. Across the kitchen, the morning sunlight caught the brand-new curtains framing the patio doors. Creamy linen with hand-stitched hems. Not her color, not her style. Dot's hand tightened around the phone. Right on cue, Karen let herself in through the side door, carrying 2 coffees and gossip. "Morning, soldier," she said, sliding one mug her way. "What's the battle plan today?" Dot didn't look up. "Reconnaissance." Karen raised an eyebrow. "Translation?" Dot turned the screen toward her. Karen squinted, then laughed, the kind that ended in a snort. "Let me guess. For the house?" Dot's lips curved, but it wasn't amusement. "That's what I'm about to confirm." In the living room, Melody was fluffing throw pillows like she was staging a magazine shoot. Cameron was scrolling his phone, pretending not to notice. Dot's heels clicked once on the hardwood, then stopped. "Lovely curtains," she said, her voice level, almost gentle. "Custom, I imagine." Melody looked up, caught off guard. "Oh, yes, I found them on sale yesterday. The space needed softening." Dot nodded, slow. "And the 4/7 charge on my card. That was softness, too?" Melody's smile froze. "Oh, that. We thought you were okay with it. I mean, it's for the house. You said you wanted it to feel refreshed." "You think a lot," Dot said evenly. "You know very little." Cameron shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, come on, it's just curtains." "Bought without permission? With my money." He stood up, defensive now. "We live here too. You can't keep acting like every decision needs your stamp of approval." Dot turned, locking eyes with him. Her calm was surgical. "This isn't a democracy, Cameron. It's property ownership. The difference is notarized." Karen, still by the doorway, took a slow sip of coffee. "Want me to grab popcorn or a calculator?" Dot ignored her. "You'll be reimbursing me," she told Melody. Melody gave a soft, nervous laugh. "That's a little harsh, don't you think?" "No," Dot said, turning toward the hall. "It's exact. And I like exact." By noon, the curtains were gone, boxed and sitting by the front door with a return label. Melody had stopped talking altogether, her silence the kind that seethed. Dot sat at her desk with her laptop open and phone pressed to her ear. "Barry?" "Here," his calm voice replied. "What's the latest?" "There's been a small, unauthorized withdrawal." "How small?" $417.23. A soft chuckle. "Petty theft? Meat paper trail. Can we document it?" "Already done," Barry said. "We'll classify it as financial misuse. Add it to your trust file. I'll draft a brief affidavit noting all prior household expenses that were charged without consent. Once it's logged, it becomes legal record." Dot exhaled. "Perfect. I'd like every cent accounted for before I start counting sins." Karen leaned against the counter, flipping through the newspaper. "You're building quite the case file, Dot." Dot smiled faintly. I'm building memory insurance. Around dusk, the sound of voices drifted down the hall again. Melody's brittle tone, Cameron's low mutter. She's overreacting, Melody hissed. Who does that? Files legal papers over curtains? Just ignore her, Cameron said, though his voice lacked conviction. She'll calm down eventually. Dot stood just beyond the doorway, unseen, calm, listening. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a text from Barry. Affidavit filed, expenses logged. Consider them on record. Dot smiled, a slow, private thing. She slipped the phone into her pocket, stepped back into the kitchen and started humming. Low, tuneless, but steady. Karen watched her, head tilted. That's a new song? Not new, Dot said. Just one I haven't needed in a while. She paused, looking toward the hall where Cameron and Melody's shadows moved under the light. Barry says every theft leaves a fingerprint, she murmured. Let's see how many they leave before I stop counting. The next Thursday came dressed like peace. Bright, harmless, forgettable. But Dorothy had learned that peace in that house always arrived wearing someone else's intentions. By 10 a.m., she was out back pruning her roses when she heard the sound. A dull thump from inside, followed by the low hum of voices. She didn't hurry. She finished clipping a branch, brushed the petals from her gloves, and went inside. Cameron was sitting at her kitchen counter with his laptop open, his fingers tapping too fast for casual use. The glow from the screen reflected in his glasses. Morning, she said, setting her gloves down. He jumped slightly. Hey, Mom. Just checking something for you. On my computer? No, mine. His voice was too bright, like someone overselling innocence. I was trying to log into the county property site, the one with tax info. Just wanted to make sure you weren't getting overcharged. Dot's silence was surgical. She pulled a chair out and sat across from him, folding her hands. And what username did you use for this generosity? Cameron hesitated. Yours. But it's all public record, right? I just needed the login to confirm the parcel data. She reached across the table, turned the laptop gently so the screen faced her. The site displayed in bold red, access denied, unauthorized attempt logged. Dot smiled. Public record doesn't require a password, dear. You must have been trying to open something private. Cameron closed the laptop with a soft snap. Mom, come on, it's not a big deal. I was just making sure things were in order. Oh, they are, she said. They're more in order than you realize. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't even look. She knew who it was. Dorothy. Barry's voice came through, steady and calm. You were right. Someone tried to access your deed records this morning using your full name and birth year. Basic phishing attempt. I flagged it. Cameron's face blanched. You called Barry? I didn't need to, she said. He called me. She turned away, already typing something on her phone. While I'm at it, let's simplify a few other things. Within 20 minutes, Dot had changed every password she owned. Bank, utilities, property accounts, two-factor authentication, a new passcode for her phone. Karen, who'd arrived halfway through the spectacle with her usual coffee and curiosity, leaned against the counter, watching. You're locking up the castle, huh? Dot nodded. Tight enough that even the mice need ID badges. Karen grinned. Wish I could see their faces when the Wi-Fi goes dark. That, as it turned out, didn't take long. At noon, a shout came from the living room. Mom, internet's out. Dot didn't answer. She was on hold with the gas company. Cameron appeared in the doorway, frustration written across his face. Did you forget to pay the bill or something? No, she said pleasantly. I transferred the account. To who? To you. What? She looked up. Perfectly calm. You live here. You use it. You pay for it. Seems fair. He blinked. That's ridiculous. She tilted her head. Isn't fairness what you wanted? Balance, I think you called it. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Before he could recover, Melody's voice joined in from down the hall. Cameron, there's no hot water. What's going on? Dot turned her attention back to her tea, stirring slowly. I'll let you explain. Karen bit her lip to keep from laughing. You really are exact. Dot nodded once. Dramatic is loud, exact is silent, and permanent. By evening, the air in the house was different, thinner, tense, the kind of quiet that comes right before a door slams or a realization sinks too deep to pull back from. Melody avoided Dot entirely. Cameron kept pacing, phone to his ear, trying to sort out billing confusion. Dot sat in the recliner by the front window, watching the sky fade from gold to indigo. Her phone vibrated once more. Barry again. Everything secure? He asked. Everything, she said. Utilities, bank, portals. I left them with just enough to notice what they lost. Want me to document this? Of course, she said. Every access attempt leaves a shadow. Shadows are useful. Barry chuckled softly. Remind me never to owe you money. Just don't use my birth year as a password, she replied, and hung up. Later that night, Cameron passed her in the hall. His voice was low, bitter. You're being dramatic, you know that? Dot stopped, turned. The hallway light cast a thin line across her face, catching the faint smile that wasn't humor at all. No, she said. I'm being exact. She walked past him, leaving him standing in the half-dark, the silence closing around him like consequence. Saturday mornings in Cedar Creek were a social sport. The town market thrummed with small talk, produce, and people who pretended not to gossip. Dorothy liked to go early, before the air filled with chatter. But that morning she came late, and walked right into the kind of conversation that peeled politeness off like old paint. She was at the honey stand when she heard Melody's voice, bright, syrupy, performative. It floated from the next aisle, carrying just far enough to be overheard. Oh yes, we're running the house now, Melody said to a neighbor, her tone dripping with self-importance. Dorothy's sweet, but she's older, you know? It's basically ours in spirit at this point. We handle everything. The neighbor, a woman Dot recognized from the HOA newsletter, murmured an uncertain, "Oh?" Melody leaned in, voice soft but smug. We've been modernizing. She just doesn't get today's pace. Online billing, property management, all that. She's lucky we're around. Dorothy didn't move at first. She let the words hang there, sinking like ice in water. The honey jar in her hand suddenly felt heavier. Karen, browsing nearby at the flower booth, caught her friend's expression and followed her gaze. Her eyebrows shot up. That little sugar-glazed viper, she muttered. Melody laughed again. Anyway, we'll probably take over the property stuff soon. It's really a family transition thing. Spiritually, it's ours already. Karen stepped closer to Dot, voice low. Should we tell her what spiritually evicted means? Dot's lips curved into a quiet, dangerous smile. Not yet. Let her preach a little longer. They lingered just long enough to hear Melody pivot to bragging about managing household finances before walking away, Karen shaking her head. That woman's writing checks her soul can't cash, Karen said. Dot placed the honey jar in her basket, calm as ever. Then I'll make sure the bank closes early. That afternoon, the house was silent except for the steady click of Dorothy's typewriter keys. She preferred it to her computer for certain tasks. The sound of each strike grounded her. On the desk lay a half-drafted letter. Its header was clinical, legal, and cold. Notice of cohabitation termination. The first line read, pursuant to Section 92 of the Texas Property Code, This notice serves to inform you that your current right to occupy the premises located at 414 Cedar Ridge Drive is hereby rescinded, pending restructured tenancy agreement or voluntary vacate. Karen, perched on the arm of a chair, sipped tea and watched. You're really doing it. Dot didn't look up. She said it's theirs in spirit. I'm about to test how far spirits can stretch. Want me to proofread? I already did. Dot fed the next page into the roller. And I sent a copy to Barry. He's drawing up the rental terms. Karen grinned. Eviction with interest. I like it. That evening, Dot sat on her porch as Barry arrived in his tan sedan, briefcase in hand. He climbed the steps with his usual unhurried grace. I got your draft, he said, taking a seat beside her. Legally, you're within full right to evict. You could have them out in 30 days flat. Dot nodded, her gaze on the darkening horizon. And if I don't want to? Then, Barry said, you raise the rent. Triple it if you want. Make them choose between humility and homelessness. Dot smiled, that small, knowing curve that had returned to her more often lately. Let's do both. Barry blinked. Both? She folded her hands in her lap. File the termination notice, formal, notarized, but add a revised tenancy clause. They can stay if they pay. Barry chuckled softly. Poetic and merciless. You're an artist, Dorothy. Karen appeared in the doorway, holding a plate of cornbread. You should have seen her face at the market, Barry. The woman's halfway to sainthood in her own head. Barry smiled. And soon she'll be halfway out of this house. Inside, the living room glowed in the soft lamplight. Melody was scrolling through her phone, humming, unaware of the storm dressed in manila folders gathering on the porch. Dot watched her through the window for a long moment, her reflection merging with Melody's, the owner and the pretender sharing the same pane of glass. Karen's voice broke the stillness. When do you plan to hand it to them? Dot looked down at the freshly signed notice in her hand. The ink shimmered faintly in the light. When she tells the next person she runs this house, she said, I'll prove her right. Karen frowned. How's that? Dot smiled. She'll be running, just not the house. The house hummed with a peculiar kind of quiet that only came when you knew a storm was forming, not with the violent flash of thunder, but with the thick, still air that held a breath back, waiting. It had been 2 days since Dot had dropped the legal bombshell on her family. The notice of cohabitation termination sat with Barry, ready to be delivered at just the right moment. She had already finalized the revised rental terms, the ones that would reset the power balance completely. A sharp reminder that her house, her rules. Dot sat at the kitchen table, her hands steady as she placed the final envelope on the surface. The thick weight of it a quiet statement. She had printed the documents herself, the crisp paper perfectly folded. Everything was in order. Just as she finished, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Cameron's shadow passed by the kitchen door, a subtle thing, but it carried the kind of tension that no family should have in the air. He entered the room with a cautious step, his face tight but trying for that easy smile, the one that had always worked when he wanted something. Mom, he began, his voice just a little too controlled. We need to talk. Dot didn't look up. About what, dear? Cameron hesitated. His eyes flicked to the envelope on the table. The weight of it hit him instantly. His jaw clenched, but he tried again, his tone pushing for calm, though the strain was palpable. About the letter. The termination. Dot placed her hands neatly on top of the envelope, her gaze never leaving him. She could feel the air between them shift. What about it? He leaned forward, the words coming in a rush. You can't be serious, Mom. Kicking us out over curtains and some little misunderstandings. We've been here for years. She finally looked at him, her expression cool, measured. Your years of being here are counted in my terms, Cameron, not yours. Cameron recoiled at the quiet sharpness of her words. His voice faltered slightly. But, you're really going to do this? I just did, she said softly. For a moment there was nothing but the faint ticking of the kitchen clock, like it too was waiting. Melody appeared in the doorway, the clink of her heels louder than usual, announcing her entry like it was her stage. She looked from Dot to Cameron, her gaze darkening. You're kicking out your own son? Dot didn't flinch. No, Melody. I'm correcting a math error. Melody blinked, a sharp laugh escaping her lips, but it sounded empty. What the hell does that mean? Dot reached for the envelope, pushing it across the table toward her. It means I'm giving you both a choice. Melody grabbed the envelope, tearing it open with a kind of defiance that only masked her rising panic. As she read the rental terms inside, her face went from confusion to disbelief. $2,800 a month, she sputtered. And back fees? For this house? Dot nodded. Backdated. You have 15 days to pay in full. The room went still, the gravity of the numbers sinking in like stones. Cameron's hands curled into fists at his sides, his chest rising with the weight of his emotions. You can't seriously expect us to come up with that kind of money, he muttered. You're bleeding us dry over a mistake, a misunderstanding. Is that what you call it? Dot said, her tone a little colder now. A misunderstanding? I've had misunderstandings with people before. Not with family. She paused. The alternative, of course, is to vacate the premises in 30 days. No questions asked. Cameron's face twisted in disbelief. You wouldn't? Dot didn't flinch. I just did. Melody's hand trembled as she pushed the papers back toward Dot, her voice rising now, losing the veneer of calm. You're kicking us out. Over nothing. Dot stood slowly, her movements deliberate. No, Melody. I'm giving you a lesson in respect. The house might be yours in your spirit, but the deed says otherwise. Cameron's breath came in short bursts. I won't pay this, he spat. I'll fight you for this, Mom. Dot's eyes narrowed just slightly, her voice a whisper. You already are. She turned toward the door, her back straight, every movement composed. I'll give you 30 days. After that, you'll have no choice but to pay. Or pack. The silence that followed was thick, loaded with an unseen force. Melody stood there, the envelope clutched in her hand, her eyes following Dot as she left the room. Cameron remained rooted, staring at the papers with a kind of disbelief, his hands trembling. For a moment it seemed like the house itself was holding its breath, the quiet before the storm that would shake their world apart. Dot's calm exterior had shifted from the calculated to the absolute, the ironclad reality that she had taken everything from them but the illusion of control. And now that illusion was being pried open, one legal document at a time. The kitchen was quiet when Melody entered, the kind of silence that presses down on you like a weight. Dorothy stood at the counter, wiping her hands on a dish towel, but her movements were sharp, deliberate. She wasn't cleaning. She was marking time. Melody, as usual, didn't like the quiet. She broke it with a sharp, bitter laugh. You know, she said, her voice taut with something Dorothy hadn't heard in it before. This house needs younger energy. It's stuck in the past. Dorothy didn't respond at first. She simply finished drying the last dish, as though Melody hadn't spoken. When she turned, she was holding the deed. It was now laminated, a hard, unyielding rectangle of power in her hands. Melody's eyes locked on it instantly. What's that? Your future, Dorothy said coolly, crossing to the fridge. She placed it on the side, the sound of the magnet snapping against the metal more final than it should have been. Melody's smile was tight, brittle. You really think this changes anything? This place isn't worth much. Not anymore. It's just... And who exactly do you think pays the property insurance? Dot interrupted. Melody's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. We take care of you, don't we? Dot's expression hardened, and she leaned in, her voice low, deliberate. You take care of me? Funny, I haven't seen any checks for rent or utilities from you. Funny how you've made yourself so at home without pulling your weight. Melody scoffed, shaking her head. This is ridiculous, Dot. You're making this about money. Making it about money? Dorothy's eyes flashed, the weight of the question sinking into the room like a stone dropped into still water. No, Melody, I'm making it about control. The quiet between them deepened, thickened. Melody took a step forward, then another, her mouth opening as though to say something, but the words tangled. She was cornered now. You're wrong, she finally spat. You can't just change everything. We're family. You can't throw us out like this. Dot folded her arms across her chest. Family, huh? She paused. You're right. Family is supposed to work together. So why is it I'm the only one paying the mortgage? Melody's face twisted with anger. You think you're doing me a favor by making me feel like a damn tenant? Dot didn't flinch. She remained perfectly still. I think you've spent too much time thinking you own what you don't. What you take care of is a lot less than you think. A silence stretched between them like a long road. Melody opened her mouth, then closed it again. The words stuck. And in that pause, something shifted. Dorothy wasn't simply fighting for control of a house. She was fighting for respect, the one thing she had been too quiet about giving for too long. Well, you know what? Melody said, her voice sharp as a knife's edge. If you think I'm going to bend over backwards for this place, you're crazy. Dot's gaze was steady. I think you've already bent enough. For a moment, neither moved. The space between them was thick with the weight of unspoken things. Melody's face flushed with rage, but she turned and stormed out of the kitchen, muttering under her breath. Dorothy didn't watch her go. She remained in the same place, her body still as stone. As Melody's footsteps faded down the hallway, Dorothy heard a door slam. She took a breath, slow and controlled, before pulling her phone from her pocket. It vibrated once, a quiet hum, a message from Layla. I'm proud of you. Dot smiled softly, reading the words over and over. Layla's quiet support was the only thing that felt truly real anymore. The only thing that mattered. She didn't need to respond. The message was a mirror of what she had been building all along. A legacy of respect, of boundaries, of reclaiming what was rightfully hers. As she set the phone down, the door to the kitchen opened again, Layla quietly stepping inside. Grandma, she said, her voice hesitant. Is everything okay? Dot met her eyes, smiling gently. It will be. It's going to be. Layla nodded, as if understanding everything that wasn't being said. She paused a moment longer before sitting at the table, her fingers tracing the edge of the laminated deed on the fridge. There was no need to say more. The walls, the foundation, the trust. Everything that mattered had been set into motion. And now, it was theirs. The late afternoon light poured through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across the table. Dorothy sat at her laptop, the room filled with the quiet hum of the house, as steady and cold as the resolve settling in her chest. She typed with a calmness that surprised even her, each word solidifying the course she had set, one she knew could not be undone. The ad was simple, clean, professional. Quiet tenant needed. Upper floor suite available. Lease begins in 30 days. She added the standard details. Price, utilities included, pet policy. But the final sentence carried a finality that seemed to echo in the stillness of the room. Serious inquiries only. Dot paused, scanning the ad once more. A quiet, deliberate smile curled at the edge of her lips. Then, with a single click, she posted it. the confirmation flashing on the screen, as if the weight of her decision had been validated in that small, glowing moment. The kitchen door opened and Karen entered, her brow raised in a familiar question. "Everything ready for the showing tomorrow?" she asked, her voice light but knowing. Dot nodded. "It's set." "Are you sure about this?" Karen asked, her tone a mixture of amusement and curiosity. "I mean, they're really going to see someone else moving in? That's ballsy." Dot didn't hesitate. "The house is mine, Karen. It's always been mine. It's time to let them know the difference between living here and owning it." Karen chuckled softly, glancing at the kitchen table where the deed now rested. "You're doing it, huh? This is the final nail?" Dot's gaze hardened, but her smile remained. Tight. Controlled. "I'll make sure they understand what quiet means." That evening, as the shadows deepened and the house settled into the kind of silence that felt too thick to breathe through, Melody stormed into the kitchen. The air was still, but there was a crackling energy to her movements, as if the weight of her silence had finally snapped. "What is this?" she demanded, throwing her phone down on the table. The screen lit up, displaying the landlord app with Dot's newly posted listing. Dot didn't flinch, when Melody's eyes blazed with frustration, the same fire that had once burned with entitlement. "It's an ad for the guest suite," Dot replied evenly. "We need a quiet tenant, someone who understands the boundaries." Melody's face twisted in disbelief. "This is some kind of threat, isn't it?" "You think you can just—" "No," Dot interrupted, her voice smooth and calm. "It's not a threat. It's a timeline." Melody's hands shook slightly, but she fought to maintain control. "You can't kick us out like this, Dot. We're family." Dot's gaze didn't waver. "You've had years to get things right. I gave you more time than you ever deserved. Now, I want quiet." Cameron appeared in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes desperate. "Mom, please. We're trying. Just give us more time. We'll fix everything." Dot's eyes flicked to him, and for a moment there was something like regret in her gaze, but only for a moment. "You had years," she said, her voice hardening. "I want quiet now." The next morning, Karen arrived early. Dot met her outside, the cool morning air cutting through the stillness. "The tenant's coming by at 11, Karen said, checking her watch. "You sure you want to do this?" Dot nodded. "The house needs a tenant who respects the space." She glanced toward the upper floor window, the curtains drawn, the silence inside waiting for someone else to occupy it. The doorbell rang at exactly 10:55, sharp and punctual. Karen opened the door to a woman in her late 20s, dressed neatly with a firm handshake and an easy smile. "Hello, I'm Clara. I saw your ad." She stepped inside, her gaze flicking around, surveying the space with the kind of casual interest that came with years of moving and renting. Dot joined them in the entryway, giving Clara a nod. "Come in. Let's show you around." As they ascended the stairs, Karen followed behind, already pulling out a clipboard with the leasing terms. Clara asked questions about utilities, about quiet hours, about the neighborhood. Everything was standard, everything calm. But as Dot led Clara into the guest suite, the room with the large bay window overlooking the quiet street, she felt the weight of her decision settle in. This room, this house, was no longer about Melody and Cameron. It was about a new start. The showing lasted 20 minutes. Clara seemed pleased, nodding at the space, agreeing to the lease terms. As they finished up, Clara smiled brightly. "I'll take it. I'll drop off the security deposit this afternoon. Is there anything else I need to sign?" Karen handed her the agreement. "We'll get it all squared away. Welcome to your new home." Clara's eyes flicked to Dot, who nodded. "It's all yours now." Dot watched Clara leave, her footsteps light on the porch steps. The woman would be in soon enough. Melody and Cameron still hadn't realized what was happening, but soon they would. The door creaked open behind her, and Layla stepped in quietly, her expression uncertain. "Grandma," she said softly. "Is everything okay?" Dot turned, her heart softening at the sight of her granddaughter. She smiled, the calm still in her eyes. "It will be, sweetheart. It's going to be." Layla nodded slowly, as if understanding everything unspoken. She stepped forward, glancing at the now empty guest suite door. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" Dot simply nodded, knowing Layla understood better than anyone else. It was no longer about just evicting Melody and Cameron. It was about reclaiming everything that was always hers. And in doing so, it would finally bring peace. The house was full of the sounds of movement. Boxes shuffled across the floor, tape ripped from dispensers, the quiet murmur of voices that didn't reach the kitchen. Dot didn't need to go into the living room. She could hear everything from the far end of the hallway, the dull scrape of cardboard on wood, the soft thud of a chair being overturned. The absence of arguments, the lack of shouting, was the most telling. It was as if, in that moment, they both knew this was inevitable. She'd expected more resistance, more anger. But instead, Melody and Cameron packed in silence. No speeches, no accusations. Just the slow, deliberate noise of their lives being boxed up. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Or maybe they'd just known, deep down, that it was already too late. Dorothy sat at the kitchen table, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of her coffee mug. Her roses needed tending, she thought absently. She could hear Layla's footsteps behind her, the soft scuff of sneakers on the hardwood. The door opened behind her. "Grandma?" Layla's voice was quiet, the kind of soft inquiry that came with a weight of understanding. "Are they really leaving?" Dot nodded, not turning. "They are." Layla lingered for a moment, standing at the threshold of the kitchen, watching her grandmother's hands on the table. "I don't agree with them," Layla said, her voice quiet, but clear. Dot looked up then, meeting her granddaughter's eyes. There was something fragile, something uncertain in those dark eyes, but also a trace of pride, a sliver of defiance. Layla, like her grandmother, was learning how to stand alone. Dot exhaled softly. "Then don't follow them." She glanced back toward the front door. "You know what's right." For a long moment, Layla didn't speak, her lips pressed together. Her fingers twitched, unsure whether to move or stay. Then, with a quiet breath, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Dorothy's shoulders. The hug was small, a little hesitant, but real. "I'll come back," Layla whispered against Dot's ear. "I promise." Dot's eyes closed for a moment as she held her granddaughter, feeling the warmth and the weight of her, grounding her. "You're always welcome, sweetheart. You've never needed permission." When Layla pulled away, she gave her grandmother one last glance before turning toward the front door. Dorothy sat still for a moment longer, watching her leave, her heart heavy with an unspoken understanding. Layla would be the one to carry on. She always had been. The sound of footsteps outside came just before the slam of a car door. Melody's voice followed, shrill and tight, as if the finality of it all had become too much to bear. "Are you seriously leaving this place?" Dot heard her say to Cameron, the frustration in her voice unmistakable. "Shut up, Melody." Cameron's voice was quieter, tinged with an exhaustion that Dot recognized. "You had your chance." She didn't need to go out there, not yet. Their departure wasn't hers to witness. She had already made her peace. A few minutes later, Dot stepped out onto the front porch, the evening air still and cool against her skin. The old oak tree by the driveway was just beginning to shed its leaves. The quiet weight of the house settled in around her, and she couldn't help but feel something shift. A sense of finality, but also of beginning. Through the front window, she saw them, Melody slamming the car door, her face twisted in something between disbelief and anger. Cameron avoided eye contact, his back rigid. His shoulders slumped, but it was clear he was as defeated as she had expected. His jaw clenched when he looked back toward the house, but he said nothing. There was no fight left in him. Dot remained still, watching them from a distance. The picture of what they had tried to take, the way they had tried to mold her house into something she couldn't recognize, played out before her. They were leaving. But she wasn't losing anything. A low hum of frustration followed them down the driveway, the echo of an unfinished chapter in the story of their family. But Dot knew the book wasn't over yet. It had only just turned to a new page. She stood there a moment longer, breathing in the cool air. When she turned back toward the house, she found herself smiling, the kind of smile that comes with acceptance, with clarity. She had made her stand, and now the house, the one she had built, the one she had fought for, was hers again. Layla would come back, and the house, for all its flaws, would stay standing. A little quieter now, maybe, but stronger. Dot turned back inside, closing the door behind her. The first step in her next chapter had already been taken. The house had never been this quiet. The walls seemed to breathe, filling the empty space with a peaceful rhythm, as if it too was finding its balance again. Dorothy stood in the middle of the living room, her hands resting lightly at her sides. The furniture had been rearranged, not just moved, but thoughtfully placed. Every surface was bare except for a few choice pieces. The oversized armchair that had once been an obstacle was now tucked into the corner, angled just so. The paintings, her paintings, from the gallery show years ago, were no longer buried in the hall, but hung at eye level in the dining room, filling the space with soft color. She had become a minimalist, not out of need, but of choice. The clutter was gone. The noise of too many voices claiming too many spaces, too many hearts, had been cleared away. The old rug that had lived under the couch for 20 years was now folded and stored. The curtains, thick, heavy, and decorated in patterns she didn't remember picking, had been replaced by sheer white linen that let the light in without holding on to any of the past. Dot moved slowly through the house, her eyes following the curve of a table, the sharp angles of the new chairs. She wasn't looking for perfection. She was looking for something simpler, something that only existed when you had fought for it, something no one could take. She paused in front of the staircase, looking at the vacant upstairs hallway, at the room she had once thought she might turn into a guest room, a place for them, for Melody and Cameron, to have their space when they wanted it. Now it was empty, and the door stood open. She felt a wave of something close to satisfaction. It had always been hers. Now it would always be. At exactly 10:00 a.m., Clara, the new tenant, arrived with a smile and a briefcase. A nurse, Dot had learned in her brief conversation with Clara the day before. She was punctual, polite, and seemed a little nervous. Not the kind of tenant who would interrupt the peace that had returned. Dot opened the door, her face calm, businesslike, and gave Clara a welcoming smile. "Good morning, ready to settle in?" Clara nodded, holding out a check. "I've got the first month's rent and deposit right here. I've read through everything, and I'm ready to get started." Dot took the check, her fingers brushing Clara's for a moment. "Good. You'll find the house quiet. I like it that way." "I'm used to quiet," Clara said, her voice warm, friendly. "I like to unwind after work, so I think it'll be a good fit." Dot nodded. "I'm sure it will be." They stood in the entryway for a moment, Clara looking around the newly arranged house. "This place is beautiful," she said, clearly impressed by the changes. "It feels peaceful." Dot smiled slightly. "That's the idea." By the afternoon, the deal was done. Clara was settled into her new suite, and Dot allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about the decisions she had made, the ones that had led to this moment. She had kept her promises, rebuilt her world with her own hands. Her phone buzzed. A message from Barry. The trust is finalized. Layla's education is secured. All the properties, all of it. It's all protected. Dot exhaled, closing her eyes for just a moment. A weight lifted, but it wasn't a lightness she had expected. This was a peace that came from necessity. A peace that could never have been built by anyone else. She typed a quick response. Thank you, Barry. This chapter is closed. Later that evening, Dot sat outside on the porch, the cool evening air stirring the leaves on the oak tree. The neighborhood was peaceful now. The world was still. Her phone buzzed again. But this time it wasn't from Barry. It was from Cameron. We were just stressed. Sorry if we pushed. She read the message twice. The words just letters on a screen. He'd never been good with apologies. This was no different. Dot set the phone down slowly. Her eyes focused on the horizon. The house behind her was quiet, the weight of it anchored in the ground she'd fought for. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what it had been, but it was hers. Her hands folded neatly in her lap, and she glanced up to the sky as the first stars began to appear, one by one, breaking through the quiet dark. She was no longer waiting for anything to change. She had already changed it all. The world outside had moved on. And now, for the first time in a long time, so had she. The house was still, but the silence was no longer suffocating. Dorothy sat at her desk, the papers spread out in front of her, each one heavier than the last. The lamp on the corner of the table flickered, casting a soft glow across the pages, her final amendments, her legacy. She had already made the decision years ago, but today, she would sign her will, an act that felt as final as her last breath in this house. The house that had been built on hard work and quiet strength. The house that had once been a home and was now only a memory for her children. She had given them more chances than they had deserved, but now they would not see a single piece of what they had tried to claim. The weight of that decision settled into her chest, steady and unyielding. The will sat in front of her, the ink still fresh on the page. She read through the terms again, her hands steady but her heart heavy. The house would stay in trust, irrevocable, beyond Cameron and Melody's reach. All their claims, their entitlement, were nullified. She wouldn't let them destroy what she had built. The changes had been simple but necessary. Layla, the one person who had never asked for anything from her but respect, was named as the sole beneficiary. A clause had been added. After college, Layla would have the option to live in the house, but only if she understood what it meant to hold the foundation, to take the weight of what Dorothy had built. Dorothy signed the last page, feeling the cool pressure of the pen as it marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. She had no illusions. Cameron and Melody would never understand, but Layla, she would. Layla would know the weight of these walls. She would carry the quiet strength that had taken Dorothy a lifetime to build. As she set the pen down, there was a soft knock at the door. It was Karen, carrying a fresh pot of tea, her eyes scanning the room before they landed on the papers. "Done?" Karen asked, her voice quiet, knowing. She set the teapot down and took a seat across from Dorothy. Dot nodded, folding the will neatly. "They treated me like furniture. I became the foundation." Karen's lips quirked into a smile. "You always were the sharpest file in the drawer, Dot. No one ever saw it coming, did they?" "No." Dot's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. "But I see it now, and that's enough." She leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant for a moment. The house around her felt different now, more like a place of her own design, more like the fortress she had always needed. She had laid down the final stone, and now it would hold. The foundation was solid. The evening passed quietly, with Dot and Karen sipping tea in comfortable silence. The air outside grew cooler, the stars starting to emerge above, a canvas of possibility stretching out before them. Then, the phone buzzed, pulling Dot back into the present. It was a message from Barry. "The trust is officially recorded. Layla's education fund is secured. You're protected." Dot smiled. "It's all in place," she murmured, her gaze still on the phone screen. Karen raised an eyebrow. "What's the next step?" Dot's smile deepened. "Now, we wait." The next morning, Dot was sipping coffee at the kitchen table when the HOA newsletter landed in her inbox. She clicked open the email, her eyes scanning the familiar layout. Updates on local events, reminders about lawn care. But at the top, there was something new. Senior homeownership leadership, Dorothy McMillan's commitment to community. She leaned in closer, reading the piece that featured her. It was a quiet recognition from the community, something she had never asked for but always deserved. She felt a slow wave of satisfaction, the kind that only comes from knowing you've finally been seen. Karen came in just as she finished reading, looking at the screen over Dot's shoulder. "Well, look at that. Your name's in lights now." Dot didn't answer right away. She just stared at the words for a moment. "It's about time." Karen grinned, settling down at the table. "Not everyone gets to be a legend, Dot. But you? You've earned it." Dorothy chuckled softly, setting the phone down. "I've earned a lot of things." The quiet of the house filled the space around them again, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like the right kind of quiet. The quiet of a woman who had fought for everything she had. And won. As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Dorothy sat back on the porch, the evening air cool against her skin. The trees swayed gently, and she could hear the faint sounds of the neighborhood. A dog barking in the distance, the low hum of a car passing by. The world continued, just as it always had. But now, everything felt in its place. Layla would come back. The house would wait for her. The weight of it, the legacy of it, was solid. Secure. And in the peace that followed, Dorothy let herself smile. For once, there was nothing left to fight. The morning light filtered softly through the kitchen window, casting golden beams across the counter. Dorothy stood at the sink, her hands moving slowly as she watered the plants that lined the windowsill. The gentle hum of the world outside was muffled by the calm inside the house, where the quiet was no longer filled with tension or regrets, but with the kind of peace that only comes after battle. The plants, once neglected, were now thriving, a metaphor she hadn't quite recognized until now. Like her, they had been given the space to grow. She paused, looking at the lush greenery, the vivid blooms, the life that surrounded her now. Her home, her sanctuary, had become more than a house. It was a reflection of everything she had fought for, everything she had reclaimed. She moved to the wall, her fingers brushing over the frame that held the deed. The laminated document now a permanent fixture, a quiet reminder of what had been won, her house, her rules. The house that had nearly slipped away from her grasp. It hung there proudly, right above the mantel. Dot took a moment to step back, allowing herself to feel the finality of the decision she had made. The legal battles, the heartbreak, the years of pushing back. All of it had led to this. A simple piece of paper, framed, but the weight of it was immense. It was more than a house. It was hers. And that was all that mattered. Later, as she sat at the kitchen table with her journal, Dot paused and wrote slowly. "They asked me for rent. I gave them independence. Now they have to find their own way. My way was never their way. And that's how it's supposed to be." The words felt heavy as she wrote them down, but there was a sense of closure, a sense of relief. She closed the journal and set her pen down, letting the quiet settle around her once more. A soft knock came at the door, interrupting her moment of reflection. Dot stood, her slippers shuffling against the floor, and opened it to find Layla standing there, holding a small care package wrapped in brown paper. The sight of her granddaughter brought a quiet smile to Dot's face. "Grandma," Layla said, her voice bright, but with a hint of concern in her eyes. "I thought I'd bring you something." Dot stepped aside, allowing Layla to enter. She placed the package on the table and hugged her tight. Layla had become more than family. She had become the heir to everything Dorothy had built. "I thought you could use a little something," Layla said softly, "and I wanted to say thank you." Dot pulled back slightly, giving Layla a curious look. "Thank you for what?" "For choosing yourself," Layla said, her voice low but steady. "You don't always see that, but I do. You're doing what's best for you, and that makes you strong." Dot didn't know what to say at first. She didn't need to say anything. Layla understood, and that, more than anything, was all Dorothy had ever wanted. Just as Dot sat back down, Karen arrived, as usual, unannounced, but always welcome. She had lemon bars in hand and HOA gossip on her tongue. "Did you hear?" Karen said, settling into a chair and taking a bite of one of the lemon bars. "The HOA wants to increase the fees again. Can you believe it?" Dot chuckled softly, shaking her head. "They'll never learn." Karen nodded in agreement, eyes sparkling with mischief. "But it doesn't matter, does it? You're untouchable now. This house is yours for good." Dot smiled, but there was something deeper in her eyes now. Something unshakable. "It's always been mine. Now, it's secure." Later, just as the evening began to settle in, Dot's phone buzzed again, a call from Barry. She answered, lifting the phone to her ear. "Everything's final," Barry said, his voice calm and reassuring. "The house is protected. The trust is secure. Nothing and no one can touch it now." Dot's smile softened, the weight of the years she had spent fighting to hold on to what was hers finally lifting. "Thank you, Barry. It's all in place." She paused for a moment, then added, "This chapter is closed." That night, Dot stood in front of the window again, watching the last few streaks of sunlight disappear into the horizon. The world outside had shifted, but in here, in her home, everything had fallen into place. She turned, looking around the room one last time, taking in the stillness, the peace. And then she whispered to herself, the words she hadn't said out loud for years. "My son demanded rent from me, so I looked at him and said, 'I own the house, and you want rent from me?'" And for the first time, Dot understood, truly understood, that this was her moment, her victory, her peace. No one would take this from her again.